Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Cord Connects. My name is Moshe Weitzberg. I am the Secretary Treasurer of Cord. I am joined by my partner, Marianne Howie, who is a member of, my partner in leadership in Cord Connects. I would like to welcome you all. Our session today is on the Cord Administrative Leadership Curriculum. Education is your business. Shouldn't you get educated? I would like to introduce our speakers. Keel Coleman, DO MBA, is an Associate Professor of Emergency Medicine at the Virginia Tech Coursework School of Medicine. His undergraduate degrees include a bachelor's in English from the University of Tennessee. He graduated from the University of New England College of Osteopathic Medicine in 2007. His residency in emergency medicine was completed in 2010 at the Virginia Commonwealth University's Medical College of Virginia. In 2016, he attended the Physician Executive MBA at the Haslam College of Business program at the University of Tennessee. A former program director, Keel is now the Associate DIO at Coursework Medical Center. In addition to his academic positions, he works in professional position acquisition for his institution and has led the advisory committee for these efforts over the past 6 years. Outside of healthcare, he is a serial entrepreneur and is a partner in 3 revenue-creating companies. Keel's interest in co-founding the Cord Administrative Leadership Curriculum, also known as Calc, was born from an appreciation that faculty development must include a basic business toolkit. The Cord membership requested a complimentary course to resources we enjoy as participants. Calc is the result. Damon Keel, MD, is the Vice Chair and the Emergency Medicine Program Director at the Virginia Tech Coursework School of Medicine and Coursework Clinic. He graduated from the University of Minnesota School of Medicine and completed his EM residency at Stanford. He did a Health Services Research Fellowship at OHSU with a focus on policy and health economics. He is a researcher in practice variation, decision error, and traumatic brain injury. Damon serves in the innovations group for Coursework Clinic, working with engineering and business development for model device purchasing and testing. Damon believes everything has a return on investment, and the hidden cash value of your residency program can always be leveraged. Calc was born out of knowing the mission of GME must also contain the mission of keeping the lights on. Those who write the checks pretty much focus on the latter. I turn the floor over to our speakers. Feel free to post any questions in the chat box, and I will moderate them to our speakers at the conclusion.
All right, well, thank you very much for that introduction. And this talk is really designed not to focus as much on Calc itself, but really some of the tools that you don't even know that maybe you need. So let's sort of get started really quickly in the discussion about why. And I want to show you a picture of this because this is really a fantastic building. This is called our Center for Experiential Learning. And many people actually want to host their wedding receptions here. When I started as program director now 11 years ago, this did not exist. And in constant wrangling and asking for new simulation space, I was accosted with CFOs who believed that this might be a fad, this simulation thing, and that really, we have focus on other areas, but yet you see it here. And this was born out of really understanding how to talk with those that hold the purse strings. And it doesn't have to be this big. Just an ask for something like new ultrasound machines, the idea of how those are procured and purchased and how you develop an acumen around those type of capital requests are just one part of the thing that really we don't learn a lot about when we're starting in residency. To highlight this, I actually dug into the model practice of emergency medicine, pulled it up from 2019 and did a quick search on PDF for business. And if you do it yourself, you'll also come up with this same error message that no matches were found. You can also do this if you quickly peruse the common or specialty specific program requirements from the ACGME, that business acumen and the language of business are not covered in your residency program and rarely, if ever, in your med-ed fellowships. So ask yourself one thing is, how do I run my residency program well? And I think we all have a focus on the idea of educational excellence and curriculum and integration within the organization and its goals and its missions. But I would actually challenge you to start thinking more about how good small companies run And I'm going to give you an example of how hard it is for a residency program to run like a good small company. So for those who peruse Fortune's top lists every year, this is actually one of the companies that's one of the big little giants for 2020. These are all companies with less than 50 employees and under $25 million in revenue. And Armor Protective Packaging is one of those. And last year, its gross revenues were 20 million. And you say, I didn't have 20 million in gross revenues. You're a small company. If you think about it, 30 to 50 or 60 residents a year, you've got probably 3 to 4 program managers. You've got 12 to 20 core faculty. This is actually just basically the total budget for core faculty and all of the administrative as well as residency costs for my company. It looks a whole lot similar to these smiling gentlemen with Armor Protective Packaging. So I'm going to pause you and say, how did this fine running company make Forbes list and be so well managed? Well, they have one person who is a senior director of marketing. They have 2 financial officers. 2, count them. They have 2 operations officers. These are people who are not making Armor Protective Packaging. They are simply running this company, and they have less cash in their bank than I do. I don't have any of those folks at my beck and call for my residency program, much less across GME at our institution. So I want you to really think about that and understand that program directors and program leadership do need some of those tools of operating officers and accountants and marketing folks.
Yeah, so I love that example, Damon, of a small company and that frame shift that we have to make from, okay, we are an academic enterprise. Let's think of what we can do to increase the scholastic experience of our trainees and of our faculty. And we're going to come up with initiatives and ways that we can grow and do something new or innovative. But you know what you're not supposed to think about is the money, because that's the dirty thing we're not supposed to actually concentrate on. And yet, when we look at barriers to doing those amazing things, like perhaps starting a new fellowship program or hiring a new faculty member or getting that cool ultrasound machine or that capital investment of a brick and mortar building like our Sim Center, the barrier is always going to be the money. So the Benjamins and how it flows. And the variation on how this money flows is unique in medicine, especially in medical education. We have a variety of different alignments between medical schools and the healthcare institution, the coding building group. And if you're a for-profit group, well, you have a whole nother mountain of issues that you have to overcome. The way that this money comes filters down to the educational space. Yeah, that next slide shows it. You know, frequently we have this idea of there's something magical here. There's some, power that is gaining. We get this much this year based on some figure that is projected, sometimes publicly, but often in internal emails. The truth is, when we think about our CFO or our business director, the person that's actually controlling our immediate future, they really are the person behind the curtain. And the emphasis here needs to be on it's a person behind the curtain. You're the physician educator, and yet that person is controlling what you can do in your near future. You need to get to know that person. There's a pathway to them. We're going to tell you that the pathway to them is much shorter than their pathway to you. So you think about it. For somebody with an MBA to come back to physicianhood, that's a long, steep bridge they have to cross. For us to get into finance land, it's actually a lot quicker. You cross into finance land and you very quickly realize these people are not just standing behind a curtain. They're taking a 10,000-foot all-seeing view. They're looking over the entire enterprise of their institution and recognizing the responsibility they have for employees, and not just this year's cool new educational initiative, but rather how are we going to be functional in 12 months, 60 months, 120. What's going to be on the near horizon for them is very different from the viewpoint that we have if we're only set in our academic mindset.
I want to also try to do one more sort of frame shift for you. And I use sort of a comical picture like this to, we've got to get out of the mindset of we have a higher calling and therefore our mission of training the next great physicians, leaders in emergency medicine or in any piece of graduate medical education is such a higher calling that money and finance and those things really shouldn't play a big role and they shouldn't interfere. But there's also another piece to this. If you talk about the evolution of sort of my thought process on this and going back to where did this sort of idea evolve even within the CORD community, was this constant sense of hearing everybody begging for something, begging and pleading and hoping that, how did you get that done? I have been asking for this forever. I don't even know where that money comes from. And I think the idea of just sort of raising our hand and trying and hoping you'll get called on and somebody will tap you and then bless you with new programs and development or expansion is really not an approach that we should be taking in graduate medical education anymore. These sort of things, as I say, really begging and pleading are not a strategy. And to have strategy, you need tools. And you really need to understand how to speak that language. And so this is actually a picture of Keel and I with attending one of our very first CORDs together. That's Christy, our program manager in the middle there. Now, we don't go that far back, but if you go back about 4 years, you'll see we gave about a 45-minute talk that was really something that went a little bit deeper on business leadership and acumen. CORD has done a really good job for many, many years and focusing on things like indirect funds, DME and IME funding. You know, anybody who's sat in one of those talks with Doug or Mary Jo has really been benefited and been blessed by it. This was a focus, and we were given 45 minutes. And ultimately, the discussion and the feedback after that, certainly working with CORD leadership, was there is clearly a clamoring for more tools and experience in the area of making my residency run a little bit more like a business. I think this is actually a highlight quote from one of our attendees who, this is part of the strategy piece that really we need to talk about. And that's the idea of I now can anticipate what's coming. And no now no longer means no. It sounds like it's going to be a discussion, which is really great. So let's take a look at somebody else. And I just want to play this clip from one of our attendees from last year.
I think what prompted me to take the course is that throughout my administrative years, I've learned that we really don't get taught a lot about the business of medicine during all of our medical training. And I feel like this is actually one of the really important parts of the job day to day when you work in academic and administrative emergency medicine. The course taught me many things, but probably most importantly, to look at why things are or are not happening when taking on new initiatives in my program. And I learned the importance of skills for strategic planning and negotiation, which I feel like I truly use on a routine daily basis, sometimes even unknowingly.
And I think that's a theme here that I'd like to, I didn't even know I really needed those. And once I had them, my job got a lot easier. But as Keel will tell you also, you can't generally just go and get an MBA.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about the MBA. You know, business acumen, not something you're born with, rather it's an education that a person can attain. It's actually kind of new. We think these things have been around forever. But the MBA, the proper terminal degree in how to manage businesses, it's really just over a century old. The first class was 1908. I actually thought it was 19th century. It's 1908 though. And you can see why that came around. Suddenly we had the ability to do large production lines, Ford being the thing that everybody always puts up on a screen and says, look, there's the first production line. There were production lines before that, but it was the first time that we did it in volume. But it wasn't just production or process improvement. It was how do you take a large entity, a large number of people whose lives depend on that entity now, totally divorced from any sort of agricultural life, and make this a livable organism that supports people and supports a product that will improve the lives of the people around them. So 1908 in Harvard. And they armed it with some teeth that are replicated today in any MBA program. Those are finance, accounting, and marketing, with the agreement that you're going to meet a bunch of people that are kind of like-minded, and you guys will become this extra class that we now know wield tremendous amounts of power. But do you always need a terminal degree to actually manage this? I would argue that no, that the skills gotten in a business course, while incredibly powerful, they don't necessarily need the time or lucre that have to be dedicated to them. In fact, when we look at MBAs today and the return on them, we have a little discrepancy. So the truth is that once you're a professional of some sort, be it a JD or an MD, DO, whatever, and then you go to an executive program, you're going to be dropping somewhere between $50,000 and $200,000 on the degree. Now, I would not disparage any of these programs. As a graduate of one, I think it was one of the best things I ever did in my life. At the same time, it was crazy expensive. That was 6 digits out of my own pocket that went into education. I kind of think a lot of education, so I thought it was important. More importantly, it put a lot of tension on a lot of places in my life. Damon can tell you that I was essentially absent as a faculty member. I'm still making that up as he reminds me every week. My wife lets me know that, yeah, I punched out, for another life, another year of my kid and her life. I also think about what were the dividends that I got on the other end. For me personally, it meant a lot. And I'm happy to talk to anybody about the benefits and costs of MBA. But at the end of the day, for what we're doing as professional educators, is this the only place to get it? Is there another venue in which we could educate folks on those teethy bits of an MBA and give you enough to work with to navigate the waters that you find yourself in now? So let's talk about those bits in a little bit more detail. So I named finance. You got these crazy equations that may or may not mean something to you. More importantly, you've got these names: future value of money, present value of money, net present value, cash flow, weighted average cost of capital. This whole language that's out there that sometimes is foisted on you when you're sitting across from your business director, some VP or CFO type character. Are they trying to trip you up? No, this is just the language they speak. Just like you talk about resuscitation and clinical decision tools. They're talking their language, you talk your own. You can learn theirs pretty easily. So finance, it's got its own language, it's got some beautiful math behind it, but it's very useful when you're building a plan. The next one up is accounting. So to me, a former English major, I think accounting is magic. It's really magical. You've got these huge tables of rows and columns, numbers galore, and everything that goes in on the left side in terms of revenue exactly equals everything that goes out. And that holds true for any large company or small company. So I've got an entity in town that runs somewhere around $750,000 a year. But at the end of the year, every little penny lines up. To me, it's a miracle that happens, but it does. And that goes for whether you're something huge like Pepsi, or maybe you're a residency at a state university. They all have to add up. And knowing how those things add up is very powerful. Next bit is marketing. Now, we have entered a new era of marketing, and man, is there a lot to learn and a lot to teach. So I don't know if anybody else has had a change recently, but we got told not so long ago that, hey, that way that you bring people to see your beautiful valley, where you tour them around the cool hillside that our hospital backs up on and our beautiful crystally brick and mortar buildings, yeah, they're not going to see any of that. No, they're not going to go to the cool restaurants or see the nightlife. Nope, you're going to serve all of that up video style. And, oh yeah, you're going to depend on a social marketing piece that perhaps you haven't gotten any sort of lucre for at all in the past. How you sell your product, yeah, that's the old school advertising. Today, when we talk about marketing, we're saying, this is our identity. Do you want to come join us? Do you want to be a part? of what we are now, that's a whole nother level. So marketing now, today, especially for us in graduate medical education, has all of a sudden turned into a magnificent mountain that we all get to climb together. Any MBA program today that's worth its salt is going to say, we're not just playing patty cake anymore and meeting all the people that you're going to sit in the lunchroom with at Goldman Sachs. Instead, you're going to be talking a lot about rational decision making. So rational decision making and its twin, rational negotiation, go hand in hand, and it's a key part of any MBA program. It's also a part of the course that we're talking about today. Emergency physicians make hundreds of decisions a shift. In fact, when I get off, the last thing I want to hear is, do you want fish, chicken, or some falafel for dinner? I don't really want to decide. I'm done deciding for the day. But there are rational ways to make these decisions, including a little bit of math that goes along with it. You can actually break down, risk stratify any direction you want to go. And when we're sitting in a comfortable academic office and thinking about what the next 6, 12, 24 months looks like, we just have a line of these decisions to make. Approaching them with a sense of something that is logical, well, it really carries the day, and it makes it a lot cleaner when those decisions perhaps don't go your way. This is why we did it 6 months ago. The next bit, anytime you've made those decisions, the next thing right behind it is some change. Has anybody seen any changes in the last 5 months? I don't know, my work looks exactly the same. Yeah, I wasn't expecting a scribe or a PA. I was going to meet Damon, over in the trauma bay. Of course, I can't recognize him because he's wearing armor. Everything has changed in our world on a dime. Not exactly the way we would plan change, but it happened. And it had to happen in a certain way. And even though it was near immediate, it took some planning behind it. Our department was looking at this stuff in January. We already were doing some of the key parts of change management, like, hey, let's create a burning platform. Like, there's a big deal on the horizon. Let's get a consortium of people that are really concerned all around a table together. Let's get some stakeholders that really need to know about this. And let's make this disaster as successful as we can. So change management is what we do every day. And having some science and some tools behind how to do it is key.
Yeah, and it's a really interesting piece to put all of those things together, and you really start thinking about how you even approach your faculty meetings and the decisions you're making in different ways because of different tools that you've been given. And how do you sort of do that in a course like Calc, or get some of those materials? And that's one of the things that has happened really as this idea has morphed, as well as the real goal for CORD to deliver more product out to its membership, that some of these things, whether it's in program leadership, are really packaged for specific purposes. And this is one of those products that is not just show up to CORD and sit in a lecture hall for about an hour. This is a unique product that's going to span over a year. And I want to talk just real briefly about how it sort of evolved and how you sort of accomplished that. One of the big pieces, though, is it's a day-long event at CORD that has a really extraordinary faculty that we'll talk about in a little bit, but that's only part of how we get that curriculum accomplished. The other really important piece to all of this is the online community of other people taking the course, as well as the online learning that happens on a monthly basis with really the best parts of the CORD Administrative Leadership course, which is the visiting and guest speakers. And we cannot announce the full lineup for this coming year's course, but these are not people we are pulling from CORD. These are people who are CFOs of major healthcare organizations, who are showing up on top lists in Modern Healthcare or Beckner's with the 100 people to watch. And there's a reason for that. every single month when we do online learning and have those guest lectures and those panel discussions, there is an entire focus on hearing them give you their language, their understanding, their future direction that they think GME is going, or healthcare, and how you can succeed using some of the tools that they have succeeded with. And over again, so many of our comments were focused on the value of those speakers. We also had people not from healthcare, but from industry in areas of marketing and change management, who are running not small cap companies with Fortune 500, but major Fortune 500 companies. And that's a really, really important piece to all of this, is collecting those individuals for you to have contact with, because the only other place to do that on a regular and frequent basis is for you to go off and do an MBA and have them show up and be a guest speaker in one of your marketing courses. So it is an important piece of it, but there's another important piece of that curriculum and how we get it accomplished.
Yeah, so a piece of that is, so you have this big giant plunge into business coursework at the first day of court. But if it just ends there and you just have monthly meetings, we didn't think that was enough. So members of the Calc community have the opportunity to do a little extra work. And I've got a picture of a present there. And that's coming directly from a quote from my chair, a guy I work for that I'm happy and lucky to work for, who told me as I was leaving the office with slumped shoulders after he gave me another job, hey, you know what? Extra work's a present. We'll open it together in a few months. But if you get this stuff done, yeah, you'll have a nice bow on top. So that's part of what we're doing with Cord. Unlike an MBA where, hey, a spouse, I'm going to punch out of your life in the next 18 months or so. At Cord, for 1 year with a little bit of digging, you can actually add to your professional life. That's an ongoing project that can be anything you can imagine. And if you're considering this, I'd be thinking about it right now. So this could be your new capital buy for ultrasound, or a new process improvement dig, or perhaps you need that new fellowship to actually make your program grow a little bit more. Maybe you need a new faculty member and you need to create a business plan for how that would work. Any of these could be decent projects. And those are just a few. The landscape is wide open for whatever you wanted to do. You just have to know that you have to dig a little bit every day. So, or every other day, as your work allows. That digging, that work, it's its own present. There may be some gold at the end of it, or you may just be digging a hole that hopefully will lead to light somewhere. So you've got your own tunnel company, but you will learn as you go. That's one of the biggest takeaways from the class that was in our first session. And that was, the work we did while going through the course, that was actually the greatest benefit. We can all go to conferences and have people drone at us for hours on end, but doing some work at home and getting to know the people in your own environment, wow, that pays dividends down the road.
And on top of that, it's a little bit of keeping you on task with something you're probably going to try to be working on anyway. And the idea there is that you get a good foundation of all of the topics Keel was talking about, and start learning that language and some of those tools and how to use them. But then over the course of the year, not only are you going to be in an online environment where people are going to check up on you and report back about different parts of the project, but we'll also have a timeline that includes different pieces of how are you marketing this idea of this new project to mid-level management within your organization. That will be a focus back again in development. When we talk about accounting, that's probably some of the time to also be working on a piece of your business plan. It's a dedicated time each month to actually work on a project and also have access to incredible mentorship along the way. It's a little bit of free labor, as I like to say. So while you're doing a lot of the digging, you've got a lot of people in support there. This is just one example. This is Erica again, talking a little bit about
me specifically, since the end of the Calc course, we are working on an EMS fellowship development at our institution. And obviously, I was able to use a lot of the skills that I learned in this course to successfully navigate the waters of fellowship approval for our EMS fellowship. So certainly that was one specific way that it came in very handy for me. Finding strategic ways to balance these competing demands.
So there again, just an example of I was going to work on that anyway, and now I had all of the tools to do it a whole lot easier. And you can get example after example of that. I want to talk a little bit about what's coming for the Calc 2.0. Obviously, it's going to be an online platform. We are really focused on a couple of areas of growth, not only with much more harnessed mentorship, but also making sure the cohort stays connected in different ways. We, believe it or not, one of the biggest actual things that was requested out of the Calc 1.0 was they all wanted more homework, which is just absolutely fantastic. The homework, though, I think, you know, we need to focus on what that homework is. Some of that homework for our upcoming cohort is going to be go have coffee with your CFO. Go identify the two people who your department answers to from business management and budget, right? Bring a copy of your residency accounting spreadsheet if it exists. Assignments are given out like that are tasks that you may or may not have already done, but also get you thinking and meeting some of the people who we want you to start spending time speaking their language. That becomes a really nice conversation in the elevator 6 months from now when you have already spent a significant amount of time with one of your chief operating officers. The other part of the homework, though, is that is really an important piece is you already have lots of faculty who are curating articles and readings that are well outside of your normal scope of coverage, whether it's in the Harvard Business Review or otherwise. This is obviously a great one, John's seminal work from 1961, I think. We probably won't go that far back for most of the articles, but it also gives you a really refreshing experience and exposure to literature that is really outside most educators in medicine's wheelhouse. And that focus is going to directly apply and spin back to your business of medical education. And I think that's always another gift that you get, is being exposed to a whole different set of readings. But really, I think one of the biggest gifts that you're going to get from a course like this and the experiences is the faculty that we have.
Yeah, so here we have Ryan Bodkin up in Rochester, who we'll hear a little bit from in a little bit. Ryan runs the marketing portion of the course, and Ryan, as he'll identify, saw an immediate need for needing to market his program. And he already had an MBA behind him. He also happens to have a brother who's a COO of one of the largest marketing agencies in the country, who we get to hear from during Calc. But he found himself having to apply business methodology to an academic position that he had never imagined. It has given him a zeal, enthusiasm, a passion for what he's teaching, and it really comes through. I can listen to this guy for hours.
What the marketing component of this course will provide you is really to show you that a commitment to future-focused approach and handling strategic business management is pivotal to the success of your program. The two big areas that I see this most impacting residency educators is in retention and recruitment, as well as convincing and motivating our residents and our colleagues that our new ideas or policies or plans are actually worth doing. Learning the language of marketing, the strategies behind behaviors of humans, what they like to do, what attracts them, what motivates them, and ultimately what keeps them is essential to what we do. What truly sets this course apart from other faculty development courses is during the course itself, it allows for practical application of the strategies and concepts that you learn during the in-person time of the course itself. Additionally, you'll have a chance to apply these concepts to your own project in a longitudinal manner with expert mentorship by your side.
So one of the things that I love about Cord and why I get enthusiastic about an opportunity like Calc is because of the unique membership that's within Cord. You know, you meet those rock star type people like Moshe Weisberg, these celebrities, they're just walking around in a fairly intimate environment, an academic assembly. There's a lot of people that you don't see on the stage, and you wind up, maybe in a bar or having some coffee with them. One of those people is Denise Sarrangar. So you're talking to this, I want to say, charming, interesting, and incredibly funny person. And then you realize, oh, she also happens to be brilliant and has a skill set that I never will. She's not only an amazing emergency physician, she also trained in informatics. And she's taken that informatics training and now is the chief medical information officer at the University of New Mexico. So you think that she's a person that knows change management? Yeah, that's what she does every time she introduces anything new. And it's why she rose into the chief position, because she does it incredibly well. She now teaches it to others in the Calc course. I learn something every time I listen to her, and I'm looking forward to doing it again this year. Dan Martin is another one of those people that I wound up having coffee with at Cord. I think in my very first year when Damon said, "Hey, you're going to Cord," and then I was getting on a plane and going. Sat down with Dan, and he didn't realize it at the time, but he actually talked me into an MBA. He was working through some of his coursework, and I was wondering, why do you have an accounting book open in front of you? He was getting his MBA at the time from the Ohio State University, where he's the vice chair of education. He is one of the big admin VP type guys at OSU. And in his spare time, he's a program director for their EMIN program. Dan teaches our finance section. And when I talked about finance being a language, this is a guy who is a walking dictionary. He can throw out these terms and can define them and then make them digestible almost immediately. That is a critical skill as an educator to have, and we're very grateful to have him on board. Sundeep is our newest faculty member. Sundeep's coming from Kaiser, where he did the Physician Leadership Academy there. He's teaching rational decision-making, and he's very interested in rational negotiation, which he's had to do again and again and again. Sundeep's passion for this is seeing not only in emergency medicine in our academic world, it's also across the whole landscape of a medical center. Who else do you have to interact with? Who else do you have to make a stakeholder in your goals? He is incredibly gifted at this, and I'm looking forward to hearing him this year.
So some takeaways. I think this is quotes from somebody who attended the course last year, and I was asking a few of them, just give me your takeaways, just the one. As you can see, this she could only list, she stopped at 3. But number 1 up there, I developed a mentoring relationship who helped me see other avenues for negotiation. I feel better. I can understand the academic landscape by better understanding the financial landscape. And finally, I'm prepared to negotiate and make strategic decisions with those in financial positions of power. And well, she just summed up the entire goals of the course. Ryan actually was making some other clips, and I wanted to play this because this was really sort of part of it, which is him saying, man, why didn't I have this?
Considerably, and I had the opportunity to take it earlier in my role as a residency leadership position. Now, we all know that residency leadership positions are high-level educational positions, However, sometimes we're unaware of the significant administrative component that goes along with these jobs. Unless you have some sort of prior career or a secondary degree of some sort, it's unlikely that you would have been trained in these different skills and techniques to be successful in this position just in medical school and residency.
So then the real question becomes, I guess, do you go? And do you attend this course? Court itself has a incredibly rich learning environment. Do you sign on for something like this? And the first thing you have to sort of ask yourself is the value added not only to your professional development, but also your residency program, the faculty around you, and to be honest with you, your chair. This is a commitment of time, and we want it to be so because we want it to be very enriching, but also worthwhile. And there is, an incremental cost for this course with the online portion of it as well as, but it's not something that should really be a barrier for you. I think this always has to be right now an ask for your vice chair or your chair. And I promise you, there is no vice chair or chair when you approach them about getting more training in business and accounting and finance that is going to say no. They will welcome with open arms and say, I can't wait. And I think that's really got to be the play of saying, well, CME is tight and it's a challenge. This is something that's value added, and our goal is to try to make it available for as many as possible. But the cohorts, we have limited the enrollment of it because we want the one-on-one mentorship to occur, and we want a small cohort that can work together. And so we're out of time in terms of speaking portion, but I know there's some folks online, and this is really a time to open up for discussion. Our goal here really was to give you some of the content areas that you may not have realized you knew that you needed, but also try to highlight that there is a source to get this material that CORD has really, really worked hard to develop and support, and it's really for the membership.
Well, thank you guys so very much for presenting that. The information is incredibly useful, and thank you for explaining what the program is all about. If anybody has any questions, feel free to post them in the chat, and I will try to moderate that and present them to our presenters today. So let me ask you a question to get started. So if somebody's debating doing an MBA and they want to use Calc kind of as a, let me see if I like this, and is this something I'm going to enjoy and something I want to spend more time in, do you think that's a valid reason to enroll in Calc?
Absolutely. So first off, I like the way you approach that, Moshe. So, hey, is this something that just sounds cool and that I want a little bit more of a taste of it, but not go whole hog on the MBA bit? Yeah, that's a great reason. I think it's also a great primer. I'll tell you, I wish that I had a little bit of time. If your future looks likely for an MBA or it's something you're very curious about, having a primer on how to do some accounting rather than start from ground zero, English degree ground zero, I'm like letting it out here, you're definitely better off having some of that experience. We'll also give you some of the tools that I guarantee you are going to be replicated. And there is a role for leadership in any MBA course. And I think that Calc can be used as a step ladder to that for sure. I wish I'd had it.
Great, thank you. Okay, so a question was posted in the chat. When do you expect this course to begin?
Enrollment for it is going to be before the General Assembly. So we have our cohort and we're ready to go. And then the course itself will be offered for CORD, and then the year-long portion of it will finish or will follow.
So big plunge at academic assembly. That'll be the 8 hours of intensive class time and introduction and kind of the rules of the road, and then throughout 2021, ending at the next academic assembly.
Yeah, and I think, in terms of the 8 hours of coursework, this, the Calc 2.0, the entire course actually builds off of each session, and all of it, the entire cohort will be actually solving with different pieces of accounting, with different pieces of finance. They'll be solving a dilemma for a Department of Emergency Medicine. And so each one of those topics will also be part of small group work on that 8-hour intensive period, in actually working and solving through a problem. So at the end, you've already done one project as a group, which will be kind of fun. I can't wait to see how well this cohort solves the dilemma.
And I know we may not have worked out all of these details yet, but with Cord going virtual this year, can you just give everyone an idea of how you envision Calc rolling out?
So that, again, obviously, as we just discussed online just a couple of days ago, that will evolve over the coming weeks to really figure out how that's going to actually look for this particular course with the virtual pieces of it. But the goal here was to really highlight the details of the course and the content to get people thinking that's what I want to do. So that when we're ready to go live with enrollment and we have the timeline and outline of everything from the core BOD, that we already have established the group that's going to be entering into it. So it's really something to put in your hopper to be thinking about, and then talking with your chair, your vice chair about the course. And as the details get finalized, our goal is to have this as seamless as possible and still meeting all of those benchmarks that we have set forth, and they are lofty.
Great, thank you. Okay, the next question is, how does Calc help you with the business of emergency medicine outside of education?
So when we look at EM metrics nationally, we really center around process improvement. I think we've just gone through this large arc of lean formatting for most emergency departments. If you're outside of the academic venue, then it's all going to be down to production, which sometimes is jarring, sometimes a little bit sad, or it may be the thing that makes you get up in the morning. The truth is, though, that these skills, finance, accounting, marketing, rational decision-making, rational negotiation, and change management, all of them are applicable, maybe outside of academics to a more extreme level than what we see in the academic world. While we say that you can no longer tell a CFO, oh, the holy mission of academics is why this thing needs to happen, that doesn't carry the water we need it to anymore. Sometimes that gets in the way a little bit because it does become the most important thing. You get outside academics, that doesn't exist at all. And you get down to the hard numbers and the hard negotiations. And you have to know how to make your arguments and how to get that argument across. And that's where these skills can really aid you significantly.
Yeah, and there's another piece of that, which, well, not to give the surprises away from the course, which I don't, but we know the cohort generally focuses their year-long projects on an educational initiative of some kind. So specifically, without spoiling it, the challenge project that the cohort will work on in class for that first intensive sessions is actually outside of medical education to really focus on how business leaders, talk about different pieces of medicine itself and how education might intersect on that side of it. But I won't say any more about the project to not give it away.
You're just dying to, aren't you?
I am, but I'm not.
Great, thank you. So the next question is Calc 2.0 appropriate for the typical amazing physician educator who has zero skills in the financial toolbox?
It's made for you.
Remember, if you go way, way, way back, how this really came about was, well, I'll give you an example. One of the projects of one of our cohort from 2 years ago, his project was to track down where the money that they were being paid from their medical school was going. This took him almost 6 months of meeting with people and tracking and finding out that checks were written in one office, sent to another place, and then returned and cashed in the same office just 2 doors down. That's where we're starting with a lot of educators. Again, we are assuming that nobody had the luxury of going and doing health economics at the Hatfield School of Government in Portland State University or an MBA in Tennessee. That is the product which is focused on the person who was not given any of that training. And no, we won't ask you to dust off your accounting textbook that you had to take for freshman seminar. That is not the purpose of this. This is much more focused on, we're all starting from zero here. Let's get you running to about 45 miles an hour. And by the end of the year, we're going to have you all driving NASCAR with a smile on your face.
Great, thank you. Okay, this question relates to what we spoke about a little earlier about the structure for this year. And the question is Calc going to be a pre-day at Cord, or is it going to be one of the general days?
Well, I am not in the circle of the final decision on those. We really looked hard at what the value was for the Cord membership of having a pre-day so they don't miss really important portions. And ultimately in feedback, it seems like the best approach is to break up the Calc into 2 4-hour sessions in the afternoon when many tracks are already coalescing, and some of the stuff in best practice can be digested in the morning, rather than somebody losing a full half day of whether it's best practice or program leadership or something. So those are still, again, on the table for this upcoming Cord. And I don't think a decision has been made on that yet, but you can certainly write to your Cord board member and voice your opinion on that. Whether it matters or not, I don't know. But I think there's merits to both of those. The Cord pre-day has so many committee meetings, and this is really designed for program leaders or those who are at the assistant associate program level who really want to get this tool set. And those folks also tend to be in a number of different committees and working groups that tend to meet on the pre-day as well. So there's always give and take, and at some point you've got to sort of make a decision. The answer there is that our plan was to have this embedded within the course or within the regular conference, but have it in a couple of afternoons. And of course the free day, well, don't have to worry about that anymore.
True. So I will tell you that, as you can imagine, given the fact that the conference will be virtual this year, the conference will look very, very different than any conference you've attended before. I will tell you that Jason Wagner and Leslie Oyama, who are the conference chairs, are working tirelessly to put together an amazing conference for you that you will be able to enjoy from the comfort of your own home, and yet still enjoy the benefits of Cord and the mentorship and the networking and gaining everything that you can from it. The structure, obviously, and the schedule is going to be somewhat different than it's been in the past, and that may give us more opportunities to strategically schedule Calc in a place that would benefit people the most. As we get more information about what the conference is going to look like, we will certainly have more conversations about this and try to get word out to the membership as quickly as it becomes available.
Yeah, so since I mostly only work swing and night shifts, could we have a session 7 p.m. to maybe like 3 a.m.? I'll take that slot. No takers? No.
Yeah, so depending on which time zone you're in, we might be able to work that out for you. So that seems to be the extent of the questions in the chat. I want to really thank Damon and Keel tremendously. Firstly, for presenting such an enlightening session for us today, and for giving us all the information about this Cord product called Calc, which is available to you as a Cord member, which is an incredible, incredible, incredible opportunity. And not just for presenting today, but for really designing this entire course, this entire idea, for conceiving of the idea, for presenting it, and for giving of their time to make it happen. This is something that you as Cord members benefit from, and it's because Damon and Keel have put so much work into it that makes it as great as it is. This is something really cool, and this is a really nice opportunity, and I really just want to thank the both of you tremendously for everything you do.
Well, thanks everybody for the opportunity to talk and attend this, and those who are listening later on, and we really appreciate it, and look forward to seeing everybody just as soon as possible in person.
So there are comments in the chat box saying thank you and count me in. So I think you've already managed to convey to people the value of Calc. Thank you all for participating. We really appreciate you joining us. If you know anyone who wanted to hear this that is not able to join us today, this is recorded and it will be posted on the Cord website. Our next Cord Connects is scheduled for August 27th, and the topic will be negotiating with your boss. Look forward to seeing you all there. Have a wonderful day, and everyone, please stay safe.
Thank you.